Ah, yes, I am back where I belong. Welcome to From Center Ice. My name is Courtney, and wow, it's been a while since I have been wearing red and having red lights on in the background. After a long time of covering some NHL playoff hockey, I am back to talk about the Chicago Blackhawks. If you are new to From Center Ice and you joined in during the playoffs, did you even know I was a Blackhawks fan? Sure, if you clicked around and went to Twitter or looked through some pictures, you would know that, and I bring them up a lot, but not as much as I'm going to be now since it is the off season, and now I am back to talking about my team instead of everybody else's teams who were successful and in the playoffs. Who needs the playoffs, right? Oh, I miss when it was us. But it is not time to be all doom and gloom about the Chicago Blackhawks because we have some exciting news. After it being basically confirmed last week, the Blackhawks yesterday made it official that they have hired the 40th head coach in Chicago Blackhawks history. Welcome to Chicago, Luke Richardson. And I'm going to be very honest with you here that going into this whole hiring and hearing that Luke was probably going to be the next head coach, I didn't know a whole lot about him, so I'll give you the basics. Luke Richardson played 21 seasons in the NHL as a defenseman. He was drafted by the Toronto Maple Leafs. He also went on to play for a few other teams, and then he began his professional coaching career with the Ottawa Senators as assistant coach from 2009 to 2012. After that, you could say he moved down in the ranks, but he was head coach of their American League affiliate, the Binghamton Senators. He was the head coach there from 2012 to 2016, and even though he moved down from the NHL to the AHL, being the head coach of an American League team is still something that is super important, especially if you're a successful coach. From Binghamton, he then moved back up to the NHL, where he was an assistant coach with the New York Islanders for the 2017-18 season. And since 2018, before becoming the head coach of the Chicago Blackhawks, he has been an assistant coach with the Montreal Canadiens. And when you think of the Montreal Canadiens, don't think of the 2021-22 Canadiens, because everything that could possibly go wrong went wrong for the Habs this year, except maybe the fact that they're picking first overall in the draft next week. But in order to get to that spot, they had to have a very bad season. But they were without Carey Price for most of it. He did come back at the end of the season. They were without Shea Weber, who is definitely retired at this point medically. Jake Allen also faced injuries, so they were mostly riding Samuel Montembeault in net. And they also had a head coaching change, moving on from Ducharme and bringing in Martin St. Louis, who they just extended and took away that interim tag. And once they brought in Martin St. Louis, the Canadiens started playing a lot better. Cole Caulfield actually started scoring goals again, but losing Carey Price for the majority of the season, losing Shea Weber, losing Philip Deneau, those are some massive holes, so it's not surprising that they had the season that they did, and it does not speak to the coaching ability of Luke Richardson. In fact, if you recall, last postseason, the Montreal Canadiens went to the Stanley Cup final to take on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Of course, they lost in 5, but it was the Montreal Canadiens, who probably weren't even supposed to win a game in the playoffs, but of course they faced the Toronto Maple Leafs in the first round, up against the Tampa Bay Lightning. But before they got there, they had to face the Vegas Golden Knights in the Western Conference Final, which is funny to say because it's Montreal, but last season, with everything realigned and them being in the North Division that was all Canada, blah blah blah, they took on the Vegas Golden Knights in the conference final, and Dominic Ducharme tested positive for COVID. So the Habs were without their head coach, so Luke Richardson had to step in and take over those responsibilities, and Montreal went 3-1 while he was their quote-unquote head coach. So again, don't think of the 2021-22 Canadiens when you think of Luke Richardson's coaching abilities. And if you want more insight into him as a coach, there is a nice little quote from Ben Sherratt after Game 3 against the Vegas Golden Knights. And he said, "I think I speak for all defensemen when I say we'd all go through a wall for Luke. We'd go through a wall for him because we know he'd go through a wall for us. He's a player's coach." And that sentiment is something that I have seen echoed across social media and across a bunch of different articles about Richardson. Again, before this hire, I really didn't know a whole lot about him. I didn't know whether I should be excited about this hiring, whether I should be cautiously intrigued about this hiring, whether it was a horrible hiring and Kyle Davidson has no idea what he's doing and they might as well just bring Derek King back to be head coach for another few years. Oh god, I'm so glad they didn't do that. To try to learn more about him, I was reading different perspectives from fans of the Montreal Canadiens, of the Ottawa Senators, of people who watched him as a player, of people who have been around him throughout his professional career. Eddie Olczyk said he is the ultimate teammate. The people that he has coached with say he's a fantastic guy. Players who have played under him say nothing but fantastic things about him. And as I was reading through all of those opinions, it brought me to his quote after the hiring. And newly named head coach of the Chicago Blackhawks, Luke Richardson, had to say, "I am honored to be trusted with this opportunity to coach an original six franchise like the Chicago Blackhawks. I plan to create an environment of trust with our team. With trust, relationships will form and grow, thus allowing everyone to blossom and execute their role. My philosophy is to be better today than we were yesterday, and to achieve that, we will need commitment and consistency." And let me tell you, just from reading that, I am ready to run through the wall for Luke Richardson. Y'all, I am all in on this hire. I didn't think whoever was named head coach for this season would really be someone to be super excited about. We all know that this is going to be the beginning of the rebuild for the Chicago Blackhawks, and the next few seasons are going to be very rough on the ice. And of course, the first thing that sticks out to you is that he played in the NHL for 21 seasons. And the fact that he was a defenseman in the NHL for 21 seasons. And if there's anything the Blackhawks need to get better at, it is defense. Or I shouldn't even say to get better at. What they need to get good at. You know, I shouldn't even say to get good at. What they need to be just decent at is defense. So, bringing in a guy who played defense in the NHL for 21 seasons is a good start. But we all know that good hockey players don't always make good coaches. Wayne Gretzky, best player to ever play the game of hockey, was not a good coach. That's not a knock against Wayne Gretzky, it's just a fact. For some guys who hockey just comes easy to because they have that much talent and are just that good at it, they don't know how to teach the X's and the O's. So you take a look at the playing experience that Luke Richardson had, and you look at his coaching experience, and you see that he's been around the NHL as an assistant coach. He's been in the American Hockey League as a head coach. And not only that, but others who have coached with him are very confident in his abilities. Players who have played under him really love him as a coach. I've seen statements that he's not just a good on-ice coach, but somebody that you want to model yourself after off the ice. And coming into this new era of the Chicago Blackhawks, where we're really going into that rebuild and going to have that youth movement and really trying to move past what has happened with this franchise for the last decade on and off the ice. From everything that I have read, Luke Richardson sounds like the perfect guy to come in right now and lead this team. Does that mean it's going to 100% work out? No, of course not. But he's a guy who really seems like he knows what he's doing. He cares about the players. He cares about the game of hockey. He cares about how his players play the game of hockey and holding them accountable and really being held accountable himself. There was one story of him putting his team through a bag skate because of a bad performance, but he was out there doing every single drill with them. That is the type of guy who can create a good culture in the locker room for the Blackhawks. A guy that can really preach a great work ethic. A coach who can motivate his players to not just play with each other, but play for each other. And if he can do that and get all of his guys to buy in and get on board, that is going to be huge for this next era of Blackhawks hockey. So while we don't know how this hiring will ultimately work out in the end, I think one thing that it does show us is that the Blackhawks are moving in the right direction and have the correct mindset of where they want to take this organization and where they want to take this team. And right now, that is all that we can hope for. While there are going to be a lot of losses throughout this next year, possibly the next 2 years, maybe 3 years, this is a great time to get excited about Blackhawks hockey, maybe reinvest yourself in Blackhawks hockey because you'll get to see it grow from the bottom and see what it can blossom into. But that's going to be all for me in this video. How do you feel about the Blackhawks hiring Luke Richardson as the 40th head coach in Chicago Blackhawks history? Are you optimistic about it? Are you pessimistic about it? Are you unsure about it? Let me know down in the comments. I very much hope my optimism isn't misplaced, but we shall see. If you would like to hear more from me or from Center Ice, you can head on over to FromCenterIce.com. There's links to all the places you can find us over there. I uploaded a Cozy Cast podcast episode this morning, so you can go check that out either here on this YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to follow along on social media, you can do that. All of the links to those platforms are down in the description for you. All of that being said, thank you all so very much for tuning in. I greatly appreciate each and every one of you. Oh, it is so nice to be talking about Blackhawks hockey again. The draft is next week, free agency is shortly after that, so buckle up because it's gonna get busy here real quick. But I will catch y'all in the next video. Bye guys.